Hi, everyone. Hopefully you're able to log in and you're here with us now. We're live. I'm here with Heather and Thomas. Welcome. Please say hello in the chat. It'd be great to know where you're tuning in from. This is our second attempt at this, and we're pretty excited with what happened in the first. So excited to do a little Q&A here today. So we've got Heather and Thomas, as I said, LogTen Pro Jedi Masters. I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves now. Heather, why don't you go ahead first?
Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks again for tuning in. I have been with Cordine for 7 years now, currently VP of Service and Operations, private pilot with an instrument rating, love everything about the aviation community, and really excited to be here. Thank you guys.
Great, and Thomas.
Hey everyone, I'm Thomas. I manage the customer support team here at Cordine. I've been in aviation for about 20 years, and I've worked for several airlines in airline operations, and I'm happy to be working for Cordine now and helping out this team with the best logbook out there.
Right on. Thanks, Thomas. So just a quick little bit of housekeeping to start, just to let you know everything that we're gonna do today is gonna be recorded. It's gonna be available on our YouTube channel. We're gonna start with 20 to 30 minutes of focus on questions that came into us in the registration that you guys felt were most important to you. That includes smart groups, and we're going to put a real emphasis on smart groups for this webinar. And we're also going to cover backup on iOS. And then we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And of course, feel free to ask questions in the chat as we go along. We'll definitely do our best to get to them throughout the webinar. The next two top requests, just so you know, were around importing into LogTen Pro data and also handling balance forwards. So we're going to cover that in a future broadcast. Obviously, if you have any urgent needs regarding these two, please don't hesitate to contact our support team. I should say fantastic support team. They'll get back to you within 24 business hours. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch over to Thomas, and he's going to start off our webinar. So as I say, please throw your comments into the live stream. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you have any questions, please throw them into the chat. Thank you so much for joining us. I can see Ronald and Virander. Thanks a lot for tuning in. So I'm going to pass over to Thomas now.
Great, thanks, Paul. So I'd like to begin with just doing a basic overview of how smart groups work and the mechanics of all that. And for this webinar, we're going to be displaying the iPad screen. One of the requests we had from the last webinar was that, how do I do all this on iOS? So we're going to be focusing iOS only. We're going to be displaying the iPad screen just for presentation purposes only, but all the functionality is the same on the iPhone, sorry. So let's dig into this a little bit. I'd like to start out with a question that came in. A customer wrote in and said, how do I see my complex time? I have gone into the aircraft tab. I checked the appropriate box for all my aircraft to be complex. And now I just want to see the time. How do I do that? Well, this is a perfect example of how you can use smart groups, and we're going to use this example to show how smart groups work. So as you can see here, this customer went into the aircraft tab, checked all the complex tabs for all the appropriate aircraft as appropriate. And then, so now let's build a smart group to see how we can create this. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to the radar tab in the bottom left. This is where you can find all the smart currency and limit groups. To create a new group, you select the plus in the top left. You're going to be presented with an option to create a new smart group, new currency group, or a new limit group. The first thing you need to know is the difference between these groups. Limit groups basically count up to a specified limit that you create when you create the group. Currency groups basically count down to a specified expiration date that you specify when you create the group. And smart groups are a filter that will display the data that you filter based on any criteria that you have within your logbook. So we're looking to filter complex time in this example. So what I'm going to do is create a new smart group. You'll see that it opens a new smart group here under the smart group section. And it's already open to start editing the data that you need to create a smart group. The first field here is the name, and you can literally just name this anything you want. We can call this complex. After you enter your name, you'll be presented with specifying a date range. LogTen Pro defaults to a dynamic date range, which is the in the last and in the next fields here. The dynamic date range basically is a revolving window. So in the last, you could specify if you wanted it to look back 6 months or look forward 2 months. In the last is the start window, in the next is the end window. So, and this is moving. This is a moving window. It changes as the date changes. You can also use a static date range if you want by selecting this slider here. And you enter the start and end dates, and these will not change. These will just stay static. As I mentioned, LogTen Pro does default to having dynamic on, and if you don't enter anything in these fields, LogTen Pro will include your entire logbook. It'll just include everything. If you did want to look back 6 months, all you would have to do is click into that field, enter 6, and then you could either choose months or you could choose calendar months. Now, this is one thing I want to point out is the difference between these two. Calendar months basically is, as it says, it's a calendar month. So if I was to look back, let's change this to 1 calendar month at the top. If I was to look back 1 calendar month, this being the end of May, this group would look back and start on the 1st of April and go to the current day right now. It would include all of April and everything in May up to now. If I was just to do regular month, LogTen Pro would look at the current date and time. So today being May 29th, it would go back to April 29th, and it would be up to the minute specific too. I mean, it would know that we're at this minute on May 29th, and it would go back to April 29th at this time. So there's the difference between those two is just difference between calendar and up to the minute 24-hour precision, or monthly precision, or yearly precision. So you can see that this difference goes to days, months, years. You can choose all of these things. Calendar quarters, 3 months at a time. So that's the difference between those. Obviously for this group, we're going to want to use the entire logbook. So I'm going to leave these fields blank. And then we're going to go down to the show field here. And I'm going to explain this a little bit. The show field basically allows you to use the entry type field in the logbook to define the data that you want the group to include. A lot of people include deadheads or positioning entries. A lot of people put simulator duties in there. You may not want to include those in your filter. So if that's the case, you can have the group choose flight only. Or maybe you want just a simulator group. Maybe you just want a simulator duty group. You could choose that. Again, these are predicated upon the entry type field within the logbook tab. So you do need to be using the entry type field in the logbook tab to use these fields. I'm going to leave this to all. The next field that we have here is display as. This is going to be the number that displays for your group. This is going to be what appears next to your group name here. And display as is basically a selection of total time, PIC time, night time. There's all sorts of things you can choose to display as here. You can choose, it doesn't have to just be times. You can choose it to display total landings, total approaches, count of flights. You can just have it show how many flights the group filtered, all sorts of things. For this group, we're looking for complex total time, so I'm just going to leave it at total time. Below display as, you're going to see these 3 colored dots. These are color thresholds, and you could specify what the group displays at what point. Heather's going to be going into these a little bit more in her example, so I'm just going to let you know that these exist. She'll let you know a little bit more how to use these, but I just wanted to talk about those briefly as I went down here. Match any of the criteria. This is a big one that we get a lot of questions on. LogTen Pro defaults to all, meaning this group will match all of the criteria that you set in the criteria section here. This, if you want to match any, it really only applies if you have more than one criteria. So for a group that has one criteria, it doesn't matter if you select this. If you have a group that has multiple criteria, you need to decide, do I want this group to match all of the criteria within an entry or just any of the criteria within an entry? I'm going to come back to this in a little bit because I want to emphasize this more. But for right now, let's finish creating our complex group. I'm going to leave this to all since we're only going to have one criteria. And I'm going to make our criteria for this group. I need to configure a criteria. I need to tell this group how to filter. So I'm going to select configure. And in configure, you can see all these 4 fields that tell you how to filter your data. In category, you can see you can choose all sorts of sections. These correlate to the sections within your logbook tab when you're entering data. For the most part, it does have a couple extra ones like place, but for the most part, these correlate to those sections, and you can see there's all sorts of data points here you can choose. This is the overview of it. We're drilling down to the data. So the data I want is complex, which was in the aircraft tab. So it's already on the aircraft tab. It's already on the one I want. So I go to key next. So this is all the fields within the aircraft tab. And you can see it has all sorts of, every option within the aircraft tab is here to be chosen. I want complex here. And since this is a checkbox, the operator I want is, and I want it to say is checked. So I want this group to display all the flights using an aircraft ID that has the complex box checked. And that's it. And there you can see my group just reset to 32.2. And if I go back to this group here, you can see all the data on the right side now is referencing the filter only of my group. It filtered 20 flights. It has this much time in a beach King Air, 210, a PA Seminole. All this data is specific to the group that is selected on the left side. You can even go here and select the flights that it filtered, and you can scroll through all the flights. Not only can you see the flights that it filtered, but now you can actually open up the flights and go into each flight and look at this more specifically. And that's how easy it is to make a group to display the time you want. Now, I said I was going to come back to this any of the criteria section here. Now, let me just touch on this real quick. If you have a group that has more than one criteria, let me just explain the difference between any and all. Let's use one of these currency groups down here. Let's use the instrument currency group. And if you want to edit any group, you click the little I button here. You can see this is the default instrument currency group that comes within LogTen Pro. This group has 2 criteria. Now you need to have 6 total approaches within 6. All of this is within 6 calendar months. 6 total approaches and 1 hold. Now I have the any selected here for this group, which means that I can filter any flights that has any of these criteria. I don't need 6 approaches and 1 hold within a single entry. I can have an approach here and an approach there and a hold here and a hold there. And it'll count up all of the approaches and see if I have, within 6 months, if I have 6 and 1 hold. So any and all means, if I have any, it means I don't have to have all of this criteria in the same flight. I can have any of this criteria in the flights. If I checked this off, it would mean that every entry has to have all of this criteria. So I would have to have 1 flight where I flew 6 approaches and had 1 hold. So that is the difference between any and all. It's the difference between, can I meet this criteria over several flights, or do I have to meet this criteria in 1 flight? An example of where you would want all of it in 1 flight is, let's say you wanted multi-engine and turbine. I want to see all my multi-engine turbine time. Well, then you would want to leave this as all, because you would want to filter both multi-engine and turbine within every single entry of the filter. So that's just a little quick overview of how the any and all feature works. Again, I just chose a simple smart group to just kind of display the mechanics of how this works here. And we're going to show you another example of how you can use this for some other features. Heather's going to go next with, I think, a simulator example.
Okay, fire away, Heather. You're up. Oh, I think Heather just disappeared. Heather just disappeared, Thomas. You lost her. So sorry, guys. We've got a little bit of a tech issue here going on. We'll try and get to it. Thomas, I'm not sure if you have anything set up that we could jump to. We did have a question. Actually, you're on mute right now. And we did have a question come in around sim duty, saying that flights entered as sim duty are showing on this pilot's map, Jay Clammy's map. Is that normal?
Yeah, I believe the map feature just looks at your entries and the from to airports. If you don't want that to show on your map, then what you're going to need to do is create a smart group to show flights only. And then here, I can show you real quick. Any smart group that you create, you can also see the map specific to that smart group. So what you're going to want to do is just create. So you can see this map is only showing the map for that smart group. So what you would want to do is create just a really simple group where all you would have to do is leave everything basically as it is. Well, you're going to want to change the name of it, of course. Well, but just in the show field here, you're going to want to just change it to flight only. This is assuming you use the entry type field. There's other ways you can filter simulator time. Heather's going to go into this more. I see Heather's back. But if you use the entry type field, that's all you have to do. And then you can use the map from that smart group. So Heather, are we back?
Hang on one second, Thomas. I was just, because I think the question was more around, like, is it normal that your sim flights show on a map? Did you cover that? Oh, you're still on mute. Yeah.
So if you have from and to airports in your sim entry, then it is normal. I don't think we have the map feature. I don't think we have the map feature set to filter between any entry type.
Okay.
So the map feature kind of runs like reports. If you don't want sims showing on your reports, then you can filter out your sim time. If you don't want deadheads showing on your reports, you can filter out deadhead time. The map kind of works the same way. If you don't want all your sim entries or all your deadhead entries showing on the map, then you can just filter out that time.
Using a smart group as you just showed, yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Cool. So let's looks like we got Heather back. Woohoo! And I'll switch over to your screen, Heather.
Yay, I made it back. Always fun to troubleshoot live technical difficulties while broadcasting live. Awesome. Thank you, guys. All good stuff. The next example that I'm going to be showing is going to be how to set up a smart group to view all of your all of your simulator time. And the way we're going to start is by tapping the plus button in the upper right-hand corner. And you'll have to forgive me, I don't have the fancy cursor focus like Thomas does, but hopefully maybe someday in the future I'll be able to get that set up. We're going to start by adding a new smart group. I'm going to name it Sim for my own references. And we're going to leave static date range, in last, in next, done as is. For the show, we're going to leave as is, but for display as, I'm going to go ahead of time and change it to simulator time. And this will be, as Thomas had mentioned, the hours that you see displayed next to the group after you get it set up will be all simulator hours. I'm going to leave the color thresholds alone for this one. Match any criteria doesn't need to be utilized. We're only having one criteria at this moment. In the criteria section, I'm going to tap on configure, category, time, key. I'm going to scroll all the way down to simulator. Operator is going to be greater than. By default, LogTen Pro will always enter in a 0, but you can enter in one for yourself for your own reference if you like as well. So we're going to look for all entries where the simulator time is greater than 0. Tap back to go back to our group, and it's set up as we want for now. So I'm going to tap outside of the group, and we can now see that simulator smart group. One neat trick they might know, as you notice here in this logbook, there are quite a number of smart groups already, and the new group showed up down towards the bottom. I want to be able to move that up so I can see it right at the top. So I'm going to tap on the edit button in the upper right-hand corner, and you're going to see these 3 cool signs that show up next to all of these groups that can be moved. And if you tap and drag, you can bring this group right up to the top and then tap on done to get that placement. And now with the group selected, the right-hand side of my iPad screen is going to show me the details for that group. So at the top, it looks like we have 22 flights. A quick tap on that field will list all of the flights that were filtered for that particular group. Beneath that, we can see that's very interesting. For some reason, there's some turbine and multi-engine land time, 2 hours of that, which I would not expect for a simulator hours group. Our recommended way to log that is in a simulator category type, and those typically don't have engine types and classes assigned to them. So we're going to put that in the back of our minds and check that out in just a minute here. But we can also see for all of the fields that we have enabled, PIC, night, cross-country, actual, dual given, any of those fields for seat time and conditions of flight that we have enabled are going to show up here in the breakdown details of the group. Looks like everything is zeroed out except for simulator at the bottom. And now we have a quick breakdown per type of where those hours are showing up. I can see right away where the turbine and multi-engine land 2 hours is coming from. It looks like there's a entry in a B733 aircraft type for 2 hours of simulator time that's populating that. Back down in FTD, 50 of those 86 hours are in this particular FTD type, and then 34 of those 86 simulator hours are in a sim type. It's a neat little breakdown if you are sitting down for an interview or to get a new rating to say, here's my simulator hours, and oh, by the way, 58% of all of the time I logged in a simulator was in this FTD, as a quick reference. Let's dive in to go ahead and troubleshoot and fix this B733 error really quickly. It's going to be just a really quick audit feature, and we can do this from right here within the Smart Group details. So I'm going to tap on the flights, and I'm going to look 1, 2, 3rd from the top. Looks like our B733 entry, 2 hours in a sim. If we tap on that particular flight, we'll see that flight details, and we can swipe to the right to clear out that B733, and we can also create a new type or see if we have an existing, let's call it a B733 sim. So we'll just type in B733, and it looks like the only one we have there is the actual type. We'll create a new type and tap on that Create New. So now we have a B733 sim for that entry, which, to wrap this up, we just need to quickly go back and configure that new type that we just created to be a simulator. Category simulator, perfect. Back to our radar. Selecting the group, we should now see that turbine and multi-engine land time has gone, and all of those 86 simulator hours look correctly logged. Additional details at the bottom, we have landings and operations, possibly necessary for simulator hours, but definitely for other hours that you might be looking at and analyzing. And now that we have our group all set up, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to set up the color thresholds. So for the sake of this example, let's pretend like you're wanting to get to 85 hours of total sim time for some sort of level that you want to reach. If we wanted to program our group to show how close we are to that limit, you can go in and say the upper limit here for the green display is going to be 85 hours. The middle limit that we want to see maybe is 50 hours, and the lower limit would be 10. You can decide all of these. It's completely customizable. And now if we tap outside the group and tap away from the sim group that we had selected, we can see that 86 hours are now highlighted in green to indicate perhaps to yourself if you wanted to know that you met that 85-hour threshold and you are green and good to go. Let's say, for example, what happens if you wanted to reach a 90-hour threshold. We can tap the details again, and we'll change this upper limit to 90, and we'll leave the rest as is. And now if we tap outside, we can see that 86 hours has turned, I like to call it orange, to show that you're nearing the limit that you want to reach. Haven't quite got there yet, but you're within that threshold of anything between 50 hours to 89 hours will show that particular color. So that describes setting up color threshold. There's a bunch of different ways that you can implement that and use that or not. You can always leave those blank. It's not a requirement for any of the criteria for the group. Was there a question, Paul, or should I keep going?
I was just going to actually pop in because I think what you were covering, we did have a question around tracking simulator time. And I know you covered it a bit in this, but I think it'd be good to just reiterate the types side of things in terms of making sure you have the sim type entered in and the simulator chosen. If you could just have a quick review of that, I think that would help. I think it was Yashasha091 who was asking about that.
Yeah, I saw
Definitely.
that too. I just wanted to point out that he is correct. If you do not want sim types in your total time, you do not have to put it in your total time. There is a simulator time field. It's specific time field for simulator only, and you could populate that without populating total time. I don't know if they know that exists, but that is there in the time fields. Anyway, I just wanted to jump in with that. I saw that question too. Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I don't know if you could show that, Heather, perhaps, maybe. Is that possible?
Definitely. So for the simulator types, really all you would need to set up is the type name for your own personal reference, and then you want to make sure to categorize that as a simulator. You don't need to have a make or model, engine type, or class. In fact, if you assign values to those fields, there's a chance that some of your simulator hours would be populating in hours of actual flight time. For the purpose of most of our reports and summaries, as long as you have the simulator type category assigned to simulator or any of the other simulator options such as training device or PCATD, those will all log in the appropriate columns in reports and summaries. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it'd be good to just show where you could turn on the simulator total time that Thomas was talking about so that you could track it separately from total time if you wanted to. In the time fields, I guess. Is that possible to turn on? Or maybe, Thomas, you want to hop in and cover that?
Are we talking about configuring the simulator time field so that it's available?
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so also within these smart group details, you can go into any of these flights and get the same options you would get in the logbook tab. So I'm viewing any flight and I can tap on the three dots in the upper right-hand corner, opt to configure fields, then scroll down to the time section and tap on configure section. This is where you see all the available time fields that you can either enable or disable if you don't want to see them. And simulator is categorized alphabetically. So down at the bottom, we've already got sim, inst, and simulator turned on. If you weren't seeing that while you're logging your flights, you can quickly configure the field and make that time field available.
Perfect. Thanks, Heather. All right, sorry to distract. Go ahead.
I was just going to get to a question from Konstantinos, who had written in to ask about separating out sim hours to not be included in flight time within the smart groups. Depending on how you're logging your simulator flights, whether or not you're also logging a total time with those, or there's a multitude of different ways that you can log simulator hours and entries. I did want to show as a quick example, we do have an entry type of simulator duty, so that if you were already logging all of your simulator flights as a simulator duty entry type, that's a really super quick way to create a smart group from that particular configuration, which I have already assigned a simulator duty to all of these flights. So if I were to do that, I would change this criteria. Don't even need to have simulator greater than 0. So we can completely delete the criteria and we can show all simulator duty. It still displays as simulator time. And looks like there's a little bit of difference here. Looks like that's something I should have gone through, but the 86 hours is still correct for simulator time. And this would actually be a really good way to audit your logbook to see if you maybe had some simulator duties that you didn't mean to enter into your logbook as such. You would say, something's not quite right here, and we would get into more of the auditing process with that. But if that's how you had been logging your flights from the beginning and you wanted to just quickly filter out anything that's been logged as simulator duty and nothing else, that is one way to do it. There's another quick way to not include simulator duty or simulator hours is adding one of the criteria. So if I change this back to all, I can go down to add criteria, category, flight, key, entry type, operator is not, and then we can type in simulator duty to match that particular entry type. Now we can see sort of the opposite of what all the flights without the simulator duty entry type would be. So there's ways to exclude particular entry types or filter out only particular entry types that you would like to see. I'm going to go ahead and reset these settings to my simulator time. And that concludes my demonstration of setting up a smart group to view simulator hours.
Hey, I saw a question come in. I might try to jump in real quick here if you guys don't mind. I saw somebody said their float planes weren't showing up. And they said they had it configured correctly in the types page. Paul, if you wanted to share my screen real quick,
Yeah.
I could. Floats is actually an aircraft tab attribute, not an aircraft types attribute. In the aircraft types, you can change the class of an aircraft to single engine C or multi-engine C. But sometimes there's a multi-engine land aircraft that has floats, and that doesn't necessarily make it a single engine C or a multi-engine C type. So floats is actually a field within the aircraft ID. So I saw the question come in, and it said that they had it set in the aircraft types page, but floats is actually a toggle switch in the aircraft ID page. So maybe that's your issue. I see Paul told you to contact support, and if that doesn't answer your question, definitely do that, and we can get to that.
I wonder, Thomas, I guess you could, is it possible to show how you might show that time as a smart group as well?
Yeah, so it's just the same way we did complex in the beginning. So I'm gonna toggle floats on for this aircraft, and then I'll go into my radar tab. I'll create a new smart group. I'm gonna call it floats. And I am going to just make the, well, I'm editing my floats, my complex one here, but that's fine, it'll work the same. I'm just gonna find floats there. And so now.
So you got the floats and then is on, right? Is the, right?
Correct.
Yeah, got it.
So let's look at this group again. You can see it filtered 37 flights. Let me just go through this again. I kind of went through it a little fast. I named it floats. I left everything the same because I didn't want to change any date range. But there is the aircraft. Floats is on. One thing I want to point out with this is that you may have one aircraft that sometimes has floats and sometimes does not. How do you handle that situation? What we recommend doing is to create a separate aircraft ID. So maybe you would have, in this example, November 3 LTP, and you might have, name it -1 and November 3 LTP -2, just some way to differentiate them in your logbook so that it could be different when you have floats on the plane and when you don't have the floats on the plane. Hopefully that answers your question, but if not, we can definitely go into it in some further detail if you contact support.
Perfect, thanks, Thomas. And Heather, you had a couple more things to cover, is that right? I'll switch over to your screen.
Yes, I do. We did have a lot of questions come through, and we constantly do as well, about what some of the best recommendations are for backing up your data, something that's near and dear to my heart. And whenever we go out to the live in-person events, that's sort of my PSA when anybody comes by to ask questions, is I want to make sure everybody knows how to properly back up your data. And it's really simple on iPhone and iPad. And I was going to do a quick demonstration here to show everybody who may not already know. If you tap on the More tab in the bottom right-hand screen, and that lands us on the More homepage, we tap in Settings, and then Backup. You will see there's an option. You may or may not already have backups in here, but this is where you'll have the ability to make a backup of your entire logbook, including settings and images and signatures, all wrapped up into one. So what you're going to want to do is tap on the plus button in the upper right-hand corner. And I'm not going to tap on it right now because this is a fairly large sample logbook that we're using. And I know from experience that it takes just a few minutes to make sure everything gets uploaded into my iCloud and saved. But once that's complete, you'll see your backup listed at the top, most recent at the top, with the little cloud icon and an arrow pointing downward, indicating that you can download it and replace it with the existing logbook you have on your device. It's not all that common that people might need to do this, but it is an option. If it's something, if you want to have an extra redundancy to these backups, there's also an option to export if you swipe to the right, and then you'll see the share sheet here for your different options to export that particular zipped up file. You can airdrop it, you can text message it. I really like to send it in an email to myself. So I'll send it to myself, and then I'll put in the subject line the date of the backup. I do this periodically depending on how often I fly, just to make sure I have a duplicate and sometimes even triplicate redundancy backup of my logbook. So we're going to delete this draft. Another question that we've been getting a lot of recently has been about duplicate types. And while this does happen, and there's a couple of sort of anomalous reasons why you might have more than one duplicate type, it's not necessarily the easiest way to take care of all the duplicate types is just right into support. We're all standing by to help, assuming you're on iOS only, and we'll take a look at your logbook. You send that in for testing, and we'll take care of the duplicate types and send it back to you right away. Super speedy.
Great. Thanks, Heather. Okay. Where to next, Dean?
I'm going to just answer some rapid fire questions here that came in.
Do you want me to switch to your screen, Thomas?
Yeah, that's okay. I think I'm okay for now. But you can if you want, yeah.
Okay. Done.
So let's see. These are some questions that came in pre-webinar. Nicholas asked, what is the best way to use LogTen Pro as a student pilot working toward on getting their private pilot certificate? This is a great question. So you can, assuming you have less than 250 hours, you can use LogTen Pro for free up until that point. So you can, after 250 hours is when the paywall comes in and you need to subscribe. So you can use it for free while you're getting your private pilot certificate. And then you can also use the signature feature in LogTen Pro to get all your endorsements signed. We even have preloaded endorsements in LogTen Pro, so your instructor can sign all of your all the wording of all the standard endorsements. Here's a pre-solo flight training right here. Oh, your instructor can just load that with one click and then sign your entry. So LogTen Pro is a really great tool to use as a beginner, not just for the professional pilot. It's got great features all the way around. Let's see, another another question that came in pre-webinar from Eduardo is, he said that an airport, Romeo Papa Victor Papa, is decommissioned. It was replaced by Romeo Papa Sierra Papa. We get these requests a lot. Keeping up to date with the database inside LogTen Pro is a full-time job, and we release that. We keep every release we update the database. But between releases, if you notice that there's an airport that needs to be updated, we always recommend just going ahead and doing it yourself. There's no reason that you need to wait for an update if you know what the details of an airport is. So you can just go into the Places tab and make all the changes yourself. I just want to emphasize that because some people just wait and wait and wait and wait for the update to come. Sometimes releases are a month away, but there's no reason to wait for that. Just go in, make the changes yourself. If it's just a change of identifier, that's easy. If it's actually moved to a different location, you may need to update the lat long locations, and that you can just do that in LogTen Pro too. So I just wanted to shoot off that question. Did we get any other questions that came in, Heather?
There was one about from Eduardo, who had noted that RPVP had been decommissioned. Did you want to touch on that really quick?
Oh, I just touched on that one. Let's see.
All right.
Yeah, well, we
did have a. Go
sorry,
ahead,
we
Paul.
have a few that have come in. If we want to kind of go live to some of the ones that have come in by Q&A, I'm not. Unless you need to cover something else, Heather.
Yeah, I have one more that I kind of wanted to touch on that I realized.
Go for it, Thomas.
You may remember our last webinar. We did an audit, and it was Mac specific. And Gernal asked, "How do I do an audit on my iPhone and iPad device?" I just want to mention something that I'm kind of excited about. We are developing an audit report. So iOS users will be able to run a report to view a lot of the things that we talked about in the Mac audit webinar. This is coming. Look for it coming up soon, and I'm pretty excited about it. And I want to go back to the airport, the RPVP airport being decommissioned and a new one coming in as well. Sometimes people want to keep those old identifiers in their logbook because when you flew to it, it was that old identifier. In those cases, people may want to create a new identifier. So you might want to keep the old identifier and then add a new place and just create a new identifier for the new airport. There's all sorts of ways you can do this. I mean, the gist of it is that while LogTen Pro does come with a preloaded database, the places database can be adjusted the same way you would adjust your types tab, your aircraft ID tab, or any of the other data tabs in LogTen Pro. So
great. Thanks, Thomas. I think we're having a few issues with Heather. She just dropped out. Hopefully she'll be back. There are a couple of questions that have come in the comments that I'm not entirely clear on. One from what's on MV. He's talking about displaying. He's talking about displaying PICUS. So he said, I want my type PICUS to display. Is that clear enough, Thomas?
P1US is a time field in LogTen Pro. I want my type PICUS to display. Why can I only display PICUS if that is the only criteria? My type PICUS to display. I guess I'm not totally clear. That would be a great one for us to connect one-on-one rather than via the webinar, so we can just really look at. Some of these are best if the customer sends in their logbook. So it's really great when somebody contacts support. If you go through the app, it defaults to send it in your logbook, and then we can look at your data and we can all be looking at the same thing. So yeah, I would suggest just sending that into our support staff and we can look at that one together.
Great. Thanks. So maybe you can send that in. I will just display actually how to do that. You can actually send your logbook in, just tap more, help, contact support. And then we just had a question come in around a built-in, does LogTen have built-in aircraft database? I thought maybe, Thomas, you could just show how, if you're inputting a flight, how to access that and open it up and see the database.
Yeah, of course. So let's go out of here. So the types tab in LogTen Pro, it looks like this on iOS. And there's a search field at the top here. If you don't see it, you may need to scroll this down a little bit to make it appear, but once you start searching here. So let's say you want to find an aircraft. Let's say we want to find, I don't know, somebody name an aircraft here. Let's do a all types. Once you start just typing in some data, you can see the database will filter not just by the ICAO code, but also by some of the word keywords here. So I just typed in CIRR for a cirrus, and you can see that it populated all these cirrus types in the database. These two tabs up here are important. You want to remember, because if you have My Types selected, it's only going to search the entries that you have in your Types tab. Whereas if you go to All Types, it's going to search the entire database. LogTen Pro does use the ICAO database of aircraft types. So all the types are going to be 4 digits per ICAO, and that's the database that we use to load LogTen Pro. So you can also see, if I just type Boeing in here, you're going to get all the different types for Boeing that you can select to choose from. So you don't have to know the ICAO code for a specific type. You can just search the name of the aircraft and it will also search for those types. So that's a way that you can use. The advantage of finding the actual type within the database is that when you select it, it autofills all this data for you. It autofills category, engine type, class. Obviously, multi-pilot, that's something you're going to want to select yourself for type-rated aircraft. So yeah, so there is a database for LogTen Pro. LogTen Pro has 2 databases. It has an airport database and a types database. Aircraft ID is all manually entered by the customer.
Great, thanks. Heather, do you have something to cover now?
Yeah, I was actually hoping to get back to a question from Hector, if you guys didn't already, about the backup in Dropbox.
No, you go ahead.
Awesome. So Hector asked if there's a way to have a backup in Dropbox, and I just wanted to quickly point out in the export options, there is an option to save to Dropbox. So it's on the share sheet. You just swipe to the right and you get the option, I have it saved to Dropbox underneath Save to Files. And if you don't see that, and you also have Dropbox on your device, you might just want to edit actions to make sure that option is in there. Another quick question, if I have a moment, was somebody had asked about generating a report. Brian had asked, how can we print our logbook? So essentially what you want to do is you want to be able to generate a PDF report and then print the PDF. The way that we recommend doing that is you select the Reports tab and then select the report of your choice. I have the Jeppesen ProPilot Log 27 selected. It's one of our most popular reports for here in the US. Going to configure a report, and for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to just filter the group to the last 12 months and tap on Generate. It will immediately pop up with the generated report, and if we tap on Save as PDF in the upper right-hand corner, it will now show us the tabs for the different PDF pages. You can go through and make sure that the totals are all looking great, and then again, in the upper right-hand corner is the share option that gives you sort of the same share sheet that you had from the backups. So you can airdrop it, you can send it in an email, you can text it. It's really just a PDF that gets sent and saved wherever you like. And from there, you can either print it at home, or we usually recommend FedEx or Kinko's for a really professional, more of a professional look. And then we also have some partnerships with some professional logbook printing services. Let's see.
Okay, thanks, Heather.
Welcome.
Oh yeah, we also had a question around the multi-pilot button. I'm just sorry. Thanks, Jay Clammy. I had forgotten that was early on.
Yeah, I still have my screen up for that if you want to show it.
Okay, I'll open it. Yeah, great. Thanks.
The multi-pilot button.
Hi, Jason.
The multi-pilot button is a way you can designate a type as a multi-pilot or type-rated aircraft. Just to clarify some confusion that we get, it does not mean that it does not mean that there were 2 pilots. A Seminole is not a multi-pilot aircraft. You can fly it single pilot. So this is a way to designate which of your types are type-rated aircraft. That comes into play more in certain reports in LogTen Pro. It's really big if you fly in Europe. The EASA reports specifically have multi-pilot and single pilot columns in them. So if you're using one of those reports, it's really important that you designate the multi-pilot button. If you're in the US, it may not show on any of the reports you're running. But it's there. It's a feature that you can definitely use for smart groups or for filtering your data any way you want. And like I said, for specific reports, it will make a difference to how the data is displayed. And in my screen here, you can see I have a Boeing 717, and this is the multi-pilot slider box. You just check it off or you check it on. So, yep. And if you have any other questions on that, just type it in if you still had need some clarification.
Great, thanks. I just realized that I was saying Jake Lammy. Sorry, it's JC Lammy. All right. Heather updated me. Sorry about that. So we had another question actually from JC's around maps. Some airports displayed on the map are showing a number of flights, which is different than the number of flights entered in LogTen Pro for that particular airport. I mean, this may require a senior logbook and troubleshooting it, but any thoughts on that, Heather or Thomas?
It might be the difference between if you have waypoints. So if you entered in a particular airport in the route versus in the from and to locations. Thomas, is that what you were thinking too?
Yeah, it could be several things. This is one of those situations where we really need to look at your logbook and see what's going on. But just, it could be maybe you have two duplicate places. So you might have two places, duplicate places in your tab. You could have some lat longs that are maybe showing wrong for a place. So, but yeah, that's really kind of a logbook specific question, and we're definitely happy to look at it if you wanted to send in your data.
That's great. We also had a question early from Virender regarding tracking PIC solo P1 US. He's, I guess, maybe applying to multiple places, or certainly having to create reports for different countries that have those different fields. You know, some need them, like the Japanese reports, and some don't have them, like the Indian report. And just, I guess, I don't know if we can answer that question or whether he needs to reach out to us, but any thoughts on covering those different fields so that they display in the appropriate reports?
In general, the reports are designed so that you don't have to manipulate your data to fit one specific report. Rather, we generate the reports to pull the data out of your logbook that it needs. For example, if one report only has PIC time, whereas another report has PIC and P1 US time, LogTen Pro can handle that. You don't need to change the way you log. If a report only has PIC time, often the report is coded to where both PIC and P1 US will show up in the PIC column. In many reports, P1 US is designated by light gray. That's another question that's really specific to the reports and how you log. So yeah, that's another one that I would love to dive into with their specific logbook.
Yeah, I think Virender was saying he's already in touch with Enrico. I said Enrico's awesome, but maybe Thomas, you could have a check-in with Enrico and see whether you can provide some support there.
Yeah, me and Enrico have a powwow. We'll look at that.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question. Just to say, everyone, that we are, coming up to 10 o'clock. We're just going to stay on here and answer questions, assuming Thomas and Heather, I'm just assuming you guys are good to do that. We're going to stay on here and answer questions, so feel free to keep them coming. We had a question from Will Presley. I think this may be another kind of send your logbook into us so we can check, but I thought maybe either Heather or Thomas, you guys could look at instrument time and how that works in the radar currency group. He said he's got the default set up, but and he is logging actual instrument and plenty of approaches, but he's not seeing any time in that group. So, or any
I have
that group.
I have the screen all set up. If you're referring to the default instrument currency group, which I have displayed right here on my screen, we get this question a lot. Most of the time, the problem is there's no holds logged in your logbook. The default criteria for the default instrument group is both approaches and holds. My instrument time is showing 0 on the radar currency group. So this is for the instrument currency group is not actually, it's for approaches. So it's displaying days until you're out of currency. So it's not actually any time. It's showing, it's displaying days until you're out of currencies. And if this is the group that you're referring to, go ahead and check if you have any holds logged in your logbook. If you need to know, if you need to display holds in your logbook, you can do so by going to the action button, configuring fields of your logbook, going down to operations, and making sure that holds is a field that you have displayed. If it's not displayed, you can configure the section and turn it on. Hopefully that's your problem and that answers your question.
Actually, Thomas, it's an interesting one in terms of instrument time and setting up potentially a smart group or something. If you actually wanted to specifically know what your instrument time, the amount of instrument or actual instrument you had, is that something worth having a quick?
Sure, yeah. So the way the radar tab works is any of these fields you select, you'll see the data displayed on the right side. A real quick way you can do this on iOS is just to look, there's a total instrument field that is defaulted on here. This will display simulated plus actual instrument time. If you have actual instrument to display in your logbook, it will also display down here. So these gray fields at the top are kind of hard-coded into LogTen Pro, and they'll show if there's time in those. The colorful fields below these mimic the fields that you have set to display in your logbook. So if you have actual instrument set to display, then you should just be able to view it on the right side right here. Great. So you can see if I have all entries selected up here, you can see that this logbook has 332.7 hours of actual instrument. Total instrument, which is actual plus simulated, is 386.8.
Cool. So that's great. Thanks, Thomas. I thought maybe we could throw one your way, Heather. We have a question here around. I'm going to switch over to your screen. And we have a question from Clint early. Hi, Clint. Glad to see you here. Has the best way to manage models inside type like 787-800 and 787-900 as an example?
That is an excellent question. Thanks, Clint. I'm more than happy to show for these particular variations within the models, since they're part of the ICAO database, they're also part of our LogTen Pro aircraft type database. So if you wanted to add, for example, the 787-800, we can tap on the plus button and we'll just quickly start typing in 787, excuse me, and 787, 78, and I know for a fact that it's actually the -8, I believe is B788. So we have the 787-8 Dreamliner, and then also the B789 is the -9, which is how it's abbreviated within that ICAO database. And if there was something that we, go ahead,
you
Paul.
can search, just a quick comment there that you could also search for it if you need to in in the types just by pulling up, right? B7.
Yeah.
There you go.
So if we search
And
all types.
You need to look in all types, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So we got the -8. Looks like we may still need to add the -9. If, for example, what I was going to go back to is if there's a type that you weren't able to find within our internal database, you can always create that record anytime you want. You could just modify it, enter in the details, assign the make and model and category, and then obviously definitely let us know if there's something we don't have, because we try to stay up on top of that on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Actually,
and just to follow up on that real quick, the B738 and the B778, the 800 and the 900 are actually separate types, I believe, in LogTen in the ICAO database. So there are separate types for those two examples. But going back to your larger question, how do you do separate models within a type? Like say you have a C172S and a C172P. You would have to create separate types for those. And you could just designate like, you could name these types anything you want. So you could make a C172 and then just put an S at the end, and then make another type C172 and then just put a P on the end. So the way to designate models is just to make new types in LogTen Pro.
Great, thanks. I actually have to apologize to John Mahoney. He actually asked a question much earlier and I forgot about it. He's saying he doesn't see multi-engine rating under certificates, wondering where that multi-engine rating information, where he'd find that.
Yeah, I don't think that is one of the in our drop-down list, but on the Mac app you can type in any text you want, and you could on the Mac app, if you use that, you can name a type anything you want, and just on the Mac app name it multi-engine, and then that should work. If you're not using the Mac app, let us know. We can send one to you real quick. Clint, yeah, I understand that they may be the same type, but ICAO actually has different designators for them. So I don't know how ICAO does their database, but I believe they have yeah, it's let me just see here, 7, 8, 9. Oh, maybe ICAO doesn't. I was thinking of 7.3. So if it is the same type, then you would just create two types. You would make you would name a type 788, and you would name a type 789. I apologize. I think I was thinking 7.3. I know that ICAO does have separate designators for things that still are different. That still might not be separate types specifically, but yeah, we do use the ICAO database, so that does happen sometimes.
Great.
And John mentioned that the -9 is not an actual type, it's an additional rating.
Right. I think I was thinking 737 when I said that. So yeah, so if you wanted a 787-800 and a 787-900, you would have to create custom types for each of those.
And John was saying he is actually on the Mac. We can't flip over to the Mac right now. So I actually suggest, John, maybe reach out to support. And I'm sure Thomas can come back to you direct and help you figure it out. Oh, yeah. So John was saying,
I apologize.
Did you see that? He's referring to the multi-engine rating.
Right. We have a few instructors on our staff who might know about this stuff better, but I believe the multi-engine is a sub-rating of the private pilot. But you can free text into the type name whatever you want, and you can make a multi-engine field. Oh, it looks like maybe you did that and it worked. Okay, great.
No, I think he was saying he reached out to support, perhaps. So
okay.
That's great. Maybe we can connect with him direct, just to say, like, definitely our support team's available. We're getting back to people within 24 business hours. So, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us there. I'll put that actually up again, so you know. I mean, on iOS, you tap more, help, contact support, and then on the Mac, there's a help menu on the top nav bar, and just click contact support, and you can send your it'll send your logbook into us, and that'll make it much easier for us to answer, right? And then can you create a multi-engine smart group? Is that what you're talking about? What's on MV? Just asking you create an ME for us, multi-engine for us. Heather, you want to do that? We've got your screen right now.
Yes. So what's on MV, if you're referring to creating a multi-engine smart group, that can definitely be done in this class categorization of the types. So if I go to radar, new smart group, we'll call it MEL. And we're going to skip all the way down to criteria, aircraft type, class is, and I particularly like to type in the whole value. It does try to match exactly when you use the is operator. So bear with me for just a moment here. Multi-engine land. So aircraft type class is multi-engine land should get us a breakdown of all 4,107 flights in this particular logbook. Multi-engine land types have been entered in and configured per those flights. In a quick details breakdown, it looks like it's 6,059.6 hours, and then the type breakdown right underneath that does say multi-engine land 6,059.6. I hope that answers your question.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, so Thomas, it'd be great if you could search out John Mahoney's support request, because I think they referred him to this to answer the question on multi-engine, so it'd be great.
Yeah, we could reach out. I'll reach out to him.
Figure that out. Great. I'm just trying to see if there's any other questions. Apologies if I've missed any. It's been kind of busy in the chat, so you know, maybe fire through any questions you might have now or anything I might have missed. I'm just looking back.
So I think what's on MV had a previous question that said, in a smart group, you can select time. I'm imagining you mean the display as time to be P1 US, but then if you select multi-engine to further filter it, that P1 US option goes away. And that's currently how the smart group setup is working, is that with a multitude of criteria, if you enter in more than one criteria, it's going to limit the amount or how you can display those results. But there's different ways to still be able to see those within the group details. And within Mac, there's nested groups, which we can do in a different webinar or definitely explain more about. But if there's a particular number or something that you're wanting to see, definitely get in touch with our support. We can take a look at how you're logging your flights and times and see what we can come up with for you to get the best results.
Yeah, so I also see that the question about multi-engine was, can you add that rating into a certificate tab types, the same one that John had. So yeah, I don't see why we cannot add that. I am going to put a suggestion into our engineering team and see if we can get a multi-engine rating in there. We always love suggestions. We're always trying to make the app better. And I want you guys to know that if you ever contact support with a suggestion, every single suggestion does get forwarded onto engineering. So we can definitely make that suggestion and pass it on.
Great. All right. Not sure if you're the first to ask about it, John. Looks like What's on MD is asking about it as well, but we'll definitely pass that on. Is it possible to create a certificate on that front, Thomas, or no?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, on the Mac app, you can change the title. You don't have to use the drop-down menu. You can call it whatever you want. So you can definitely create a multi-engine rating on the Mac app just by free texting into the type field. So I'll connect with John later. We'll get this set up for him and make sure it looks exactly like you want.
Yeah, so we have something coming from JC again, a suggestion. On page totals for the all entries group, it would be nice if we could select which time category to display under each aircraft type. And I think you covered this a little earlier, Thomas, or maybe Heather, but it'd be good to go through again. Noah is actually online here, and he did mention that this is possible, but maybe we could show it live in terms of, you know, the fields that you have configured in your logbook and what shows up on the Analyze tab. I wonder if we could just do a quick example of that. Do you think you guys would be able to whip that off?
Yeah, I got it set up.
Okay, I got Thomas's screen online here, so we'll show you how to do that.
So let's go back to, this is the radar screen, and you can see, as I mentioned before, these colorful fields where you can see PIC, night, and actual instrument.
Thomas, can I just jump in for 2 seconds here? I just realized I'm 15 minutes over time. We are going to cover this, but I just wanted to thank anybody who needs to take off now. Just thanks for anybody who needs to leave now. Obviously, feel free. I wanted to say we really appreciate you coming online with us today, and we've really enjoyed doing these, and we're going to be doing some more in the future for sure. So look out for the invites for sure that will be coming out shortly. We're going to aim to try and do one every month or a couple months for sure. So thanks a lot for joining in. Really, really, really appreciate it. And as I said, this recording will be up on YouTube afterwards. So if you need to go back to it, feel free. And we will be adding time codes as well to help you jump between sections. So Thomas, I'll jump back to you to cover that question. Yeah, so the fields that are displayed in the Analyze tab are completely customizable. You can see here, I have PIC, night, and actual instrument set to display. That is because if I go to the Logbook tab, you can see PIC, night, and actual instrument are the fields that I have set to display here. Obviously, total time is not configurable, and that is always shown in the All Entries tab. So if you want to change what shows in the Radar tab, all you need to do is to configure your fields, go down to the configure section under time, and let's add some more time here. Let's add IFR, and let's add SIC. And now we have a couple more fields here. So now if we go back to our Radar tab, and sometimes you just need to let this thing work through. Let me see if I can put some time in here. All right. I'm just going to let the app recalculate everything here. And now if I go back to my Radar tab, you can see that SIC and IFR are now being displayed. Sometimes you just need to restart the app to have it would have populated eventually, but I just did that since we're on a webinar and I wanted to do something real quick. But yeah, so you can see that the fields that are displayed here are totally customizable to whatever is displayed in the Logbook tab. That's great. Thanks. Actually, that was a good little tip there. You went through quickly in terms of the repair logbook. Is that something that's useful for people to see?
Yeah, usually restarting the app is just the same thing, but sometimes we do have a little repair logbook feature that's found in the More tab. It just kind of runs through and recalculates everything for your logbook. It's good to do this once in a while. Do it once a month. It just kind of goes through your logbook and runs through looks at the relationships between types and people, or between your flights and people, and aircraft and aircraft IDs and all that stuff. And usually you'll come back with a message, no repair is necessary. If you ever get a message that it found a little repair, then just run it again until you get no repair is necessary. So just one of those little things that's in the logbook there.
That's helpful. Thanks. Okay, great. Thanks for that comment, JC. All right, well, we'll stay on for a couple more minutes, see if there's any other questions or anything I missed. Please post it in the chat. Really appreciate everybody joining us. It's been a great session. Thanks a lot, Thomas and Heather, for your efforts with all this. A lot of prep goes into this session, so really appreciate the efforts that you guys have made too. So thanks.
And I was gonna
and we're trying to customize these to what people want. So let us know. Let us know what you guys want, and we're gonna try and stay with you and talk about the things that you want to talk about.
Go ahead, Heather. You were gonna jump in.
I was just going to quickly respond to JC. Definitely get back in touch with us. I know I've spoken with you before. Love to hear from you again. Get a better idea of what you're looking to do and with your 70 different aircraft types and how you're looking to configure those and get them displayed. And we'll see what we can get set up for you. Right into support. We're here to help.
Great. That's awesome. Well, there's always a delay on YouTube, so maybe we'll just hold off a couple minutes more. Thank you again, everyone, for joining in. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning. And as Heather and Thomas have noted throughout, like, our support team is standing by, really ready to help you with any issues that you have. Any features that you would like to see in LogTen Pro, please let us know. We're trying to make, well, I think we want LogTen to be the leading logbook, and anyways, I'll talk as the marketing guy. I think it is already, but any features and feedback, we are very, very happy to receive. All right. Thanks again, everyone. All right, so I think we'll probably be signing off. Thanks, Mark, for that. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you being here, all you guys. And we'll probably end the broadcast. So thanks, Heather. Thomas, you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Paul, for moderating this.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Hope you're all staying safe and keeping busy out there. We're here to help. If you want to just stop into support and say hello, send us a quick note or say hi in the chat. Thanks again for joining our webinar. We're looking forward to doing many, many more of these.
You bet. All right. Thanks a lot. See you everybody. Bye. Have a fantastic Friday. Have a fantastic Friday and weekend. All righty. Over and out.
Bye.